Thanks so much for joining our webinar today. It's all about videos and managing videos with the new stream experience called Stream on SharePoint. We're really excited to share how to make the best use out of this new experience and talk a little bit about migration as well. Before we get into it, I just want to mention a couple of notes with this webinar experience in terms of housekeeping. We are recording sessions, so for anyone that couldn't make it, that's totally fine. We will share that recording and slides in an email, so watch your email for that, and it'll be posted on our website in the next couple of days. We also have a Q&A function here, so just take a moment, make sure you can find that, and feel free to ask questions throughout as we go. We'll try to address them at moments throughout this session or at the end as well, if we have time. And there is a live captions option as well if you are looking for that. So let's go to the next slide there. Yes, these are just the notes that I mentioned. And what we're talking about today, so in case you're wondering what our topic is, we're going to be talking about videos. We know videos are getting more and more usage in organizations. They're a great learning and training resource. And so we want to make sure that we build great experiences for videos in your employee portals and intranets. And so we'll talk a little bit if you are coming from an organization that's using Stream Classic. We'll talk about how to plan that migration because there is a migration involved. And so we want to make sure that everyone has the tools and the know-how to do that and to move to the new experience. And then we'll also spend time looking at that new experience, how to organize, how to view videos, and touch on the life cycle, managing the life cycle of videos. So that includes things like expiration dates and retention. So I want to make sure that everyone has all that knowledge so they can build a great video experience. And so if you haven't met me, my name is Jazz. Do a quick introduction here. I've been working with SharePoint and Microsoft 365 for a number of years. I'm really passionate about helping people get the most out of the platform and make these tools not only easy to use, but maybe even fun to use. So I'm hoping that everyone's really excited by that mission as well. And my background is in user experience and design. And with me, I have Jeff, who is an expert in all things Microsoft 365. I'll pass it over to him to do a quick intro.
Yeah, hi everyone. So I am Jeff Dunbar. I have about 5 to 6 years experience in SharePoint and Microsoft 365 now. I come from a bit of a web developer background. I am certified in both Microsoft 365 and one of our partners, Collabware. So I focus on kind of everything Microsoft 365 from SharePoint all the way through to Teams. And that includes, how all this content works together, how we can use things like videos in SharePoint and access them where we want to.
Perfect. Thanks, Jeff. And we will pop his video up as well. I just wanted to give you some context on the new stream, introduce you to it if you haven't seen it already in your environments. And so what it is, it's still a place that you can go, but it is more of a search-based experience, and we'll talk a little bit about that. And so it's a place that you can go to manage videos, discover videos in your organization, and even do a quick recording or a quick upload if you want to do that from the new stream. And so it should be familiar if you come from Stream Classic, right? Videos are seen there. They play as well. So they play with all of the tools you would expect, chapters, a few comments, things like that. What is different is behind the scenes, videos are saved into SharePoint or OneDrive. And so that's the key difference. And sometimes we get asked, what's the difference between Stream Classic and new? A key difference is how these videos are stored. Stream Classic stored them in a special service, Microsoft Stream Service, and Stream on SharePoint, the new version, you manage and you play video files directly that are saved in SharePoint and OneDrive and Teams as well. So through Teams, you can add videos into SharePoint. And so want to make sure everybody's clear about that. There's a big difference in how these videos are managed. However, if you're familiar with using Word documents and Excel files and all these other files in SharePoint, it's just like that. You're managing videos in document libraries. So why is Microsoft making this shift? Well, it's important that the videos play really well with the collaboration and the compliance features in Microsoft 365. And so because Stream Classic was its own service, it didn't have some of these other features. And so included with the new stream, you get version history, e-discovery for lookups, legal holds, retention policies, so being able to expire and set retention on videos, just like any other file, is now part of the new stream. Videos being part of the audit logs. Managing permissions is just like permissions throughout the Microsoft 365 experience. And then, of course, you can use the APIs and analytics and other features included with Microsoft 365 with the new stream. So that's a really important reason why this new shift, why the new stream. And so just keep in mind as we go through this that there's a little bit of a mind shift that happens. So with the new stream on SharePoint, it's not necessarily only a special place that you go and you put videos. It's less of the central video portal, but more about embedding videos in context, say within a site, within pages, within the right library, so that you can share videos based on topic. And users upload and they manage their videos just like any other file they would in SharePoint. So just keep that in mind as we go through, and then Jeff will now go through sort of a deeper dive of what that looks like.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks, Jazz. Yeah, so we'll take a quick look here at Stream in a second. But as Jazz mentioned, Stream on SharePoint is really a roll-up of that content, a search portal. So we're getting away from all those individual services. We're looking at storing this content, in, as Jazz mentioned, SharePoint and OneDrive. So with that being said, right, we now have a portal that's bringing all that content together from multiple places. And kind of giving you that display where we can take a look at, all that recent videos that we're working with, videos that we have access to across the platform. Could be things that people shared with us from their OneDrive, could be meeting recordings, could be, things that we've uploaded, learning videos, etc., that are available to the whole organization. We also get some of the great features that SharePoint allows us. So we've got thumbnails now. We can create little about videos. We even have things like transcripts and captions that are available. For some of those longer videos, if we're creating, maybe learning content, we can add chapters. We can have comments from users, just like with pages. We can have those comments. And then, as Jess mentioned, we get things like analytics. There's some noise suppression and things built in there as well. So even though this content lives in SharePoint, we can access it in the new stream or through SharePoint and kind of use some of these features that we'll take a look at here. So I'll just bring that up. So here's kind of the portal. You can do things like upload, so uploading to your personal OneDrive, you can upload new videos. You can actually create recordings directly. And then we have these new things called playlists that we'll talk about as well. As I forgot real quick, I'm just going to mention that there has been a bit of a service issue with Microsoft today. So if you might have been working in your tenant, you might notice that you can't see all your apps and things. So bear with us if anything in this demo might not work exactly as expected. We're working around it, so we'll try our best to show you everything we plan to show. But if something goes slightly wrong, don't hold it against us. So as we're looking through the portal here, you can see recommended videos. So typically using some of those new AI features, search-based content, right? So what is content that, users who I work with are uploading, all that kind of stuff. So it's recommending videos based off of past experiences, using some of those good new AI features to bring that content up to you. You can also see, videos across the platform. So most of these are in my demo video portal here, but you can see things that are located in other areas too. So my approvals section, you can see what I've done to those as well. And then there's some filters and things in here, along with your menu that you can use. So if I want to open it or open it in its file location, I can share it. I can add these potentially to my to-do to watch later. I can favorite, unfavorite, and even hide things. So maybe if this video is not relevant to me, I might want to hide it so it's out of my roll-up list here. Got some filters and search-based stuff as well here. So once I do hide videos, I can do things. Show me all those hidden videos. Maybe I want to get one of those back. Show me, those tasks assigned to me, things that I've worked on, created, etc. So some of those nice filters and features in Stream itself, even though that content doesn't actually live here in Stream anymore. As I look at the videos, so this video has opened in Stream. They do open in SharePoint as well, depending on how you access this video. And I've opened this directly from that Stream portal. So it has opened within the context of Stream, but again, that lives in my SharePoint site. So just like files, when we're looking at where those live, it is in the SharePoint site that I'll bring up later as well. So we've got some of those nice features. We can add a description about this video, so a nice little way to kind of inform users about what's happening in this video. I can look over at my video settings. I can do things like update that thumbnail. If I want about that video or not, I can actually turn that off if I don't need it. And then we can generate our transcripts or upload transcripts we might already have. Turn on off chapters. So again, larger videos, maybe want to break that up based off chapters so users can, go back and forth between the important areas, kind of like you'd see in YouTube and things like that these days. And some of those other good things, comments, analytics, how much has that video been watched in the last little bit, and you can check all of that kind of stuff. So a really nice little portal here, but in the back end, right, we are using SharePoint as that document or that video repository now, as well as that document repository. So not its own place in Stream anymore. So recordings have changed as well over time. So most recordings, Teams meeting recordings, video are stored in your OneDrive when you record those. So you may need to move those. You may need to leave them there. Depends on what you want to do with those videos, what those recordings are from. And then Teams meetings hosted in a Teams channel, if you're familiar with hosting them actually out of a Teams channel, will be stored directly in that SharePoint default document library. So we can upload our own videos, same way we upload documents to any locations we want. When we're talking about recordings specifically, if I am the host of that recording, it's probably going to my OneDrive, which I can then manage later. If it is out of the context of a Microsoft 365 group and Teams, it does go into that default document library. It goes into the documents, channel name, and recordings folder. So just be aware about that when you are creating recordings. That will be the new location of where they are. They no longer go directly into Stream, and that has been a change for a little while. So we'll talk quickly about migrations. So moving that existing content out of Stream. So if you are using Stream Classic today, we need to get that content out. The service will be retiring. So we can look a bit at our timeline here. So it's been coming for a while, right? Stream on SharePoint was announced back in 2020. More recently, they've made some of those great features that we just saw available in SharePoint. And then they've actually been kind enough to create a migration tool for us. So we don't have to necessarily go out. There is a new migration tool that we're going to show here in a minute that is actually super handy and useful to use. Now we are getting close to the retirement here. So as of May 15, by default, no new videos can be uploaded to Stream Classic. Now there is an option to change that. However, right, that is coming to disable by default new videos being added to Stream Classic. So if you want to continue using Stream Classic for the near future, you will have to change that setting in your tenant. Going forward to August, no new videos uploaded to Stream Classic at all. So even if you have chosen to extend that past May 15th, by August 15th, that is shut off. You will have to stop uploading to Stream Classic and go to SharePoint, OneDrive, etc. Even jumping up into October now, there will actually be the disabled Stream Classic by default. Again, you can extend this a bit to February 15th, 2024, at which point they will fully retire Stream Classic. And if your content is not migrated out of Stream Classic, it will be deleted at that point. So you do want to take action sooner rather than later. If you hit that February 15th, 2024, and you haven't migrated your content, it will be deleted and lost.
And I'll just add, Jeff, that sometimes timelines do change. Sometimes Microsoft changes dates. So just keep an eye on that link down below as well. If this is you and you're putting videos in Stream Classic today, just pay attention to some of those dates.
Great point, great point. So when we're talking about our migration, you need to come up with a migration strategy as well as a migration plan. you're going to have really two strategies. Are we going to migrate everything immediately, kind of what we would deem a lift and shift, or are you going to selectively migrate content? Now, we would always recommend with any type of migrations, whether it's documents, videos, wherever it's coming from, file share, SharePoint on-premise, other SharePoint sites, never to do that lift and shift. You end up bringing all that rot, so all that redundant, obsolete, transitory content you might not want into the new solution where it's probably not going to get cleaned up over time. And that could be actually a big problem with videos. We'll talk about storage of videos and capacity for storing those videos, but videos can be quite large and you might not want to migrate a whole bunch of old content that isn't relevant anymore. So with anything, we recommend selectively migrating that content, right? We might not need meeting recordings from 5 years ago. We might not need somebody's personal vacation videos that they were sharing with one of their colleagues or coworkers. Why bring all of that stuff over into SharePoint when it's not relevant to the business anymore? No one's watched it in years. So we want to be selective about migrating that content. There's a good chance to clean up some old videos, get rid of some of that old content that maybe has been sitting there in Stream Classic for a long time. With that strategy in place, right, we need to then come up with that migration plan. Everything should have a nice plan behind it that we do. Same as in we're migrating content out of file shares or any other system, right? We need a plan. Step one is always to familiarize users with Stream on SharePoint, right? So what are those new features? What's available? If I store my files in SharePoint or OneDrive, what are my options, right? If I go to that new Stream portal, what do I get there? What can I do there? And of course, with that, you're probably going to want to block those uploads to Stream Classic. So it's going to be done for you automatically coming up soon based off that retirement timeline. But you can go ahead and preemptively block those uploads as well and start getting users comfortable with using that SharePoint Stream on SharePoint. With all kind of big changes like this, right, comes that change management piece. So you want to communicate with those end users and content owners about the upcoming change. They own those videos. That video is their content, whether it's part of their department, learning, whether it's part of that whole organization. It could be town hall meetings, etc. Right? There's always a content owner. And there's also users who are accessing that content regularly. So you want to communicate with end users about this upcoming change, make sure that everyone is aware, and you're not going to surprise them the next day when you actually start those migrations. From there, once you've started communicating, you've blocked that access to Stream Classic. You're now encouraging users to store video in SharePoint, new videos. You can take an inventory and start to plan the content to migrate from Stream Classic, right? We probably don't want to take that lift and shift, as I mentioned, so we want to be selective. We want to take that, there's some reports that we can run, get an inventory of all the content that lives in Stream Classic, and then we can start to plan that content and how to migrate it. So we are going to need to do things like identify the new destination. We're probably not taking all the content that lives in Stream Classic across channels and groups and things like that, and moving it to one single location. We want to store that content in the context of what it is, right? So it might be only useful to a certain group. So maybe it's going to their Microsoft 365 site. Maybe, it's more organization-wide. Maybe it's going onto your employee portal somewhere, right? So maybe it's going into your learning site. There's lots of different places it could go. Some of it might go to a user's OneDrive, right? It might be their content that they've used to create stuff. Maybe it doesn't need to go into SharePoint yet, but maybe it's going into their OneDrive. So work with those content owners, build up an inventory of all that content that does exist or the locations of that content in Stream. And plan out those destinations. In a lot of cases, right, this might require you to build new document libraries, determine metadata that might be involved in that migration. So we're not necessarily just going to be able to say, okay, we have the content, belongs to this group, let's migrate it. We might need to go ahead and build out a new document library, right? Build out a place to store that content, add some pieces of metadata that are going to help users later, work with that. And we're going to get into all of that and show kind of what that looks like in the new SharePoint design. Now, once we have that whole plan, we have our inventory, we know where that content's going, we've identified all the owners of that content. we can start to do, a test or pilot content migrations, right? Make sure that that's all working fine for when we do that migration. Check on things like timing, right? How long is it taking us to migrate these videos? What's our scale going to be? And start to pilot some of that content, do some test migrations, see what that outcome is, how it looks like in the source once you migrate, or the destination, I should say. Once you start the migrations, right, you want to do those migrations as quickly as possible. Ideally, you want all that content into SharePoint or OneDrive as fast as you can, within reason, right? So following your structure, depending on how much content, it's going to take a bit of time to make those migrations, but you don't want to start migrating content, take a month break, start migrating a little bit more content, right? Always try and get users into one place, working in that new environment, off of Stream Classic, no longer interacting with Stream Classic, and now working just in the new stream as well as SharePoint and OneDrive. Once all that migration is done, you can disable Stream Classic, remove users' licenses, and as mentioned, anything left behind will eventually be deleted when Microsoft fully retires Stream Classic. So that'll be a bit of your migration plan. It does take some planning. It will, need to involve end users as well as, your SharePoint administrators who are going to do that migration. So you need to have that communication. You do need to build out a bit of a plan, depending on how, thoroughly you've been using Stream Classic over years and how much content is in there. Your plan could vary from quite simple. Maybe you're doing all that migration very quickly. But maybe if you have, tons of users using Stream Classic over the years, that migration plan may take some time to build out, and it may take some time to actually complete all those migrations, of course. So in comes the SharePoint migration tool for Stream. So they have been kind enough to create this nice migration tool to help us and support us in this process. So there are some great features in here. They're still adding new things to this tool, so new features are coming over time. However, it does work for what we're looking to do today. We could run our migrations already. So I'm going to attempt to do a live migration here. Hopefully, fingers crossed, it goes well. So I will just bring this up. So the migration tool itself can be found in your SharePoint admin under this migration tab. So you've got your typical migration options that are here, but our nice one here is Stream. And we can pop in here. So this is going to be a real migration from the Gravity Union environment, assuming it all works well.
It's very brave, Jeff.
I know. Live demo. So I've already gone ahead and added some containers and things. I'm going to come back and talk about this because the migration of the content does take a couple of minutes to do at least, and I don't want to sit here and just watch it. So I'm going to start a migration real quick, and then I'll jump back and I'll talk about the tool and kind of all the features in here. So we are going to migrate our Gravity cast. I have my destination site set here, and we're just going to start this migration and let that process in the background. So that'll start running, and then I'll pop back over here and we can talk about it. So when you come into the tool, you end up starting out in the scan environment. And these are really all the containers that exist within Stream Classic. So containers by company-wide channels, user content, so the stuff that belongs to that user. If you have been in Microsoft 365 and Teams and Stream Classic for a while, you'll know when we used to record videos, they used to not save to our OneDrive, they would instead save to Stream. So that's where this user content comes from, as well as things maybe that they've uploaded themselves. We also have specific stream groups, and then you will also see Microsoft 365 groups, so things that maybe have been recorded within the context of that team in Microsoft Teams. You can add tags. So I've quickly tagged some content here, right? This has already been migrated. I don't really want to migrate this content, so I'm actually going to ignore it. And these tags can be whatever you want, right? They're custom, you can create them. So if you want to tag things as pilot groups, maybe it's wave 1, maybe you want to tag them by what department or location they're going to as well. You can do this, identify content owners and things in this way. It doesn't do anything during the migration, right? It's not a way to automate and say where things are going. It's just a way to help you manage the migrations over time. When you first come in here, you won't see containers. So I've added a bunch of containers, but by default, you can just scan all of Stream for containers. So it's going to search and find new containers that you haven't found yet. If users are still using Stream Classic, you can run this again and again and again. You'll find new content, you'll find new containers that have been. If you've already disabled Stream Classic, then you won't need to run this again once you run it, right? It will find all that content users can no longer upload. If you really want to and you know all your containers, you can specify single containers. You could take this from reports and things that you've run. And you can also manage these within a CSV file. But for most users, just doing a basic scan, automatically scanning and finding all that content will be more than enough. Once you do scan it, it will tell you how many videos, how much data, and when you most recently scanned that content. So scan by itself lets you know what's here. It doesn't automatically add these to your migrations. So I can see how many containers I have, how many videos, how much data has been scanned, and I can scroll down, find that. As I mentioned, I can add tags and things like that as well. But once I want to migrate something, I can pick that and I add that to my migration. So this is where I don't need to add all these ignores or different things. I can add maybe pilot groups when I'm ready to go and kind of manage and maintain that other screen, that migration screen as I'm working through things. So it's not as clogged up and I can kind of work through that. So once I add this to a migration, I can then pop over into our migrations tab over here and I can see what's going on, right? So I can see, yay, our Gravity Cast is finalizing right now. So in the time where I was talking there, it has mostly finished. So I'll bring that up and show you what that looks like in SharePoint in a minute as well. I can see which ones have never run. I can see which ones I've already completed scans on. So coffee and culture hasn't been run. So I could set that up. I can look at the defaults, right? Set my destination. So when I click on that, depending on where it's coming from, what type of container, it may have a default destination. So when it's that user's container, the default will be set as their OneDrive. When it comes from Microsoft 365 group, it will be the default SharePoint site document library that they have. But I can change those, right? So using that migration plan that we've worked with the content owners, figured out where this content is going, I can change it. I can search by sites, pick the library that it belongs to, and save that path. In this case, I'm not going to actually change this one because we've already done the Gravity Cast, but I can see all those things. I can also schedule a start time, right? So maybe I don't want to manually run these. Maybe I don't want to run these during the workday. So I can manually schedule a start time. Could be after hours, things like that. Could be throughout the weekend. I could plan this out so that they're just starting kind of one after another as well, so that we're kind of controlling that migration. So some nice features that you can use here to kind of manage and maintain that. Folders, files, data, this kind of works after we've done a migration. So this will all be populated with what's happening, right? How many folders have moved into Stream. So when it does do this migration, it does use folders in order to move those based off of channel names and different things like that. It'll tell you how many files, right? So if there was any failures, could be corrupted files, names that aren't too long or not good enough. Could be oversized, right? There's a maximum size of videos you can migrate at a time. So it could be too large or could have just failed for some reason. And then a little bit of the data, how much, how many gigabytes have gone through, how many have failed, et cetera again. So if I open up something like our updates and I take a look, right, it's going to tell me 4 successful, perfect files. I can come in, I can see, 27 videos were there, 0 were skipped, 0 unsupported. So it's giving you a little bit of those details of what happened after you've done that migration. So you kind of track and see and make sure that everything's worked out for you. So there we go, perfect timing. Our Gravity Cast has completed. So if I do come over into my SharePoint site, I'm in a document library. Now this is a super basic document library. I'm going to show you something a little more advanced coming up here. But it's created this folder for me, so stream migrated videos, so I know where that content is. There's that Gravity Cast content, recordings, and then some videos. So after you do this migration, you might do a couple things like, move these out of the recordings, get that into your default library. You might need to then tag some metadata and things like that to these as well to make them, a little more useful, easier to find, etc. And we can get rid of, not download. We can delete the folder once we move those out. So a little bit of cleanup, a little bit of work for the end users to do once you migrate that, but nice, easy, simple migration of those 3 videos. Took, 5 minutes or so for that to come through. Not too bad. It's going to depend again on how much content you're migrating at a time. So now that we've done that migration, how do we actually work with those and use those in SharePoint? So as Jad touched base on real quickly, we actually store our videos just like we store our documents now. As you saw, I just had a document library there in SharePoint. Nice and easy place to store them. Users already know how to work with documents and document libraries. So it's not that big of a jump to then store videos in there. So we don't have channels and things like that anymore. So that metadata, that library design, storing those in context of what they are. So maybe it's in your learning center, maybe it's within a group site, specific area, function of the business, that you want to store that in. That all becomes very important to organize and find that content, right? So this could be considered kind of a replacement for those channels that we used to have in Stream Classic. So now we're organizing our content just like we would with our documents. So it's going to depend on the permissions to that content, who's accessing it, where they access it, all of that. So it comes into your overall design and information architecture of SharePoint itself. Once it's in SharePoint, we can really curate that content faster, or curate that content nice and easily within web parts, playlists, and help users find that content in intuitive ways. So not everything needs to necessarily be just a document library with videos in it. We can use things like playlists. We can bring that web part into SharePoint pages, create nice curated content for users to help them view and find that content and see what's relevant to them within the context of how they work. So once it's stored in SharePoint, we can design these pages using things like the hero web part, highlighted content web part, file and media viewer, or the new playlist in Microsoft Lists, which is a really nice feature that they've added recently to allow us to actually create nice video content playlists, organize that content in a logical way for those viewers to kind of work with that content. So I will bring up my demo and we can take a look at some of my designs. So I'm just here in what I've deemed my video portal. Not everything has to be a video portal, right? Like I said, it could be your learning center, it could be within your team site. It all depends on what those videos and content pertain to. You want to put them in the context of that content as well, just like you do with your documents today. So I've got a nice hero web part up here. It's got a couple videos, some other content, maybe it doesn't have to just be videos, right? So this is just a link off to SharePoint Lookbook. But the really nice thing is I can actually play this within the context of this SharePoint page. So I'm highlighting a key video and I can play that within SharePoint here. I can full screen if I need to. I can actually open this in Stream. I can control, noise suppression, playback speed, all those things without leaving the context of this page, which is super handy and useful, especially for things like an employee portal where maybe you want to post, updates from the CEO or, recent town hall meetings for people to quickly view and things like that. I can open it in Stream if I need to, right? So if I want to see that kind of in its full screen mode, if I want to deal with the chapters or comments or things like that, I can then open this in Stream and work with it. Popping back to my video portal, I can close out of this one. I could play this other one if I want to. I'm not going to start that one. Same idea. Can have as many videos, one video, multiple videos within this hero web part. And then scrolling down, I can start to use some other web parts as well, right? So maybe we're highlighting videos that we deem super important. Please watch these. But we can use the web parts to kind of bring that to the top. And then you can do other cool things like, show me the trending videos. So what have people really been interested in lately? Let's surface that content. Show me the videos that have been most watched all time throughout, the platform or this specific portal or a specific library site. You can really break this down to where you want that content to come from. Show me the most recent videos. Again, this is in SharePoint, so it respects permissions and things like that. So if this content is from many different areas and I have access to all of it, but Jazz only has access to a couple places, she's going to see something a little bit different, right? It respects all those security permissions that are in place. So by storing in the context of that content, you can view all of that in place and maintain those permissions and everything. So behind the scenes, this content all lives in my SharePoint library here. Now, again, the content could be surfaced from all throughout the portal. In this case, right, for this demo, we've put this content in this one library. And then we've used some metadata to actually help us sort, find, and filter this. So I have simple learning categories, right? So what does this pertain to? Maybe who's the video owner? You can create this metadata tags for whatever makes sense for your purpose. It's not going to be the same through every document library. It's going to depend again on that content, where it lives, what the use case is for each user and the owners of that content. Once it's in here, of course, we have things like views, sorting, filtering, right? So show content by learning category, nice and easy. I'm interested in Power Platform. I can quickly go in and find all the Power Platform videos. Different ways we can view it, sort it, find it, along with using those pages and web parts. So, show me by video owner, things like that. Whatever piece of metadata you've applied, of course, we can then use that to help us find this. Now, great, nice and easy, especially if this is in your team site, right? I can find that content, I can work with that content, I can edit, update that content. I can also play that content from here, of course. So if I do click on it, just like with a video, it's going to open up. This time, it will actually open up in SharePoint, but I can choose to then open that further in Stream. Again, it's kind of working like a document in context in that web viewer. I still have my video settings. I still have all of that nice Stream features that are there, or video features now, I should say. If I need to, right, I can then open that in Stream, or I can just work with this within the context of that document library. I close out of that. I'm back here in my document library again. But then the nice thing here is we can use the new playlists in Microsoft Lists as well. So I want to curate that content a little bit more for my team. I want to show them, hey, what videos are available. Now this might be one of those things that's not quite working right now. But the videos will play here. I can pick which ones to use. I can add new items. Again, this content lives in SharePoint. So if it's going to work here for me, perfect. I can switch to my learning videos library or any other location that the content might be in, and I can choose to add these into this playlist, right? So add, site designs into this playlist because it's a SharePoint playlist. I believe this one's already in there right now. And it's nice and simple. I can select them. They all live here. Add them to my playlist, curate that content. So I can have playlists for lots of different reasons. Could be data governance, could be learning content, right? So progressive learning, etc. Again, dealing with a little bit of SharePoint issues today, Microsoft 365 issues. Sometimes a refresh is all we need. right? So I can play this again within the context, same as if I was playing this out of a Hero web part or something. I can, full screen, open in stream, etc. But I can switch between those videos, see like content together. So a nice little way that you can kind of curate that content, create a little playlist for users. As we go in, we can also create content within more SharePoint pages, right? So if you're doing more employee portal-based content, nice and simple to use things like the file and media viewer to play this content. So again, I can play out of the context of this page. I don't have to navigate away. I can make sure that, I'm working in here. I'm not leaving, that space that I'm working in. I can create these pages. I can roll up multiple pieces of content, use all the other web parts that are available and features of SharePoint. So maybe I'm rolling up, some learning videos. Maybe I want to do Microsoft 365 videos, change management. So I'm using those pieces of metadata that we've defined on that document library, so those learning categories, to surface the specific content that we want, right? So this is all our content related to change management that's been tagged as change management. If I go back to my learning videos library and I find my change management, right, I can see there's 2 videos. Those have been rolled up. So using this learning category, I can curate this content throughout the entire platform. Now, of course, we don't have to just be video focused either. So if I'm looking at a page context, I have a whole bunch of other information. Maybe I'm looking at some blog posts, some external links, want to roll up some Twitter content, an upcoming event. Maybe I've got a bunch of documents, contact the team, but I can also then focus on that video content within, again, the context of how you work. So because all of this content lives in SharePoint, we've used this metadata, we've tagged it. Now that it's in here, we can bring that content, to where it's relevant to users. We can allow them to access it and work with it and view it where they need to. So really, it's up to your imagination. You can create pages as complex. You can create portals. You can store that content in playlists, or I guess, sorry, not store it in playlists, but create playlists that link to that content stored in SharePoint. Lots of different options, just depends on how creative you want to get and how advanced you want to build these portals and pages, but nice and easy for users to work with. Embed those videos directly in pages and the context of how users view it and work. So that's just some examples of our SharePoint pages and how we store that content. So we'll move on to a bit of that governance piece. So now that we're storing this content in SharePoint, we need to govern that content. So by default, there's some governance applied to things like Teams meeting recordings for us automatically. So default expiration for meeting recordings is 120 days. You can change this, so you can set this default at a global level in your tenant, or you can actually be a little more granular and assign policies to certain groups or individuals. If maybe your leadership team should have meeting recordings stored for longer, you can go ahead and set that by them. That's the default for Teams recordings. We can also use Microsoft Purview or other tools in order to kind of create more, create retention that more follows, our actual life cycle of that content based off of our file plan and things like that. So following the rules of Purview, longest retention wins, shortest deletion wins, right? So retention beats that expiration or deletion, but shortest deletion wins if you have multiple policies applying to the same content. So as an example, if my expiration is set for 60 days or 120 days default, I have a retention label for 1 year assigned to that content, that SharePoint location, that content type, whatever it might be, the content will be retained for 1 year. It will not delete after those 60 days. It will retain for that 1 year, and then it will be deleted. If you have an expiration of 120 days, but the Purview deletion policy of 1 year, no retention policy in this case, just a deletion policy, it will be deleted at the shortest period. So after 120 days, it will not stick around for that 1 year that you've applied to it. So just be aware of those as you are working through some of that. Since our videos are stored in SharePoint, all of that applies. Retention is applied now the same way as it is to documents. So those purview principles of retention and deletion that I just talked about do apply here. And third-party products can also easily apply retention to your new videos. Exactly the same as you work with documents, content is stored in SharePoint. You can apply all that same good retention, deletion policies, etc. to those video content now, help manage that life cycle of videos. Why that becomes really important also leads into our archiving discussion. So videos can be very large in size and eat into your SharePoint quota. Especially things like Teams recordings, right? If you're always recording your Teams meetings, you're going to have a lot of those over time that probably aren't super relevant as you get a year down the road, 2 years down the road, even 3 months down the road. So Stream Classic had its own storage quota. However, SharePoint, you're just using your regular storage quota that already exists based off of your amounts of licenses and things like that. You can always buy more storage, of course. But your other option, right, for some of your videos, maybe you want to archive those to a cheaper storage solution, right? Could be in Azure, could be another location, especially for content maybe that you're retaining permanently. There's always some videos that might have been done for a reason. Could be something that you need to retain permanently as part of your leadership or whatever it might be. If that is the case, you might want to move those into a cheaper storage after a period of time. Have them available while they're still relevant to users, and then maybe 2-3 years down the line, right, you're looking at moving that to a permanent storage location. Teams meeting recordings probably don't ever need to be archived unless there is a legal reason for those ones to be archived. You know, based off of studies, they are rarely watched again after the first 60 days. So leaving that initial, 120-day expiration usually won't hurt. Okay, just to summarize kind of all of that, some major takeaways from today's session. Plan your migration and migrate your content selectively is our recommendation. You don't want to take that lift and shift approach and just move everything. You're going to get a bunch of content that you don't necessarily want. You're going to eat up some of your storage quotas. So do that planning, work with your content owners to figure out, the best source and destinations. Design SharePoint libraries with metadata to help sort, filter, and find and curate that content, right? So again, don't just plan to move all that content as is and leave it. You want to make sure it's findable, it's sortable, it's filterable, and you can actually use that content in relevant ways going forward. Once that's in SharePoint, we can really use those web parts in those pages to create, beautiful portals, bring that content into, the context of what it is and where it should be viewed. And then leverage that new Microsoft playlist to actually help build that content out in logical alerting lists or viewing lists. Could be things that you want users to watch in a progressive order. And you can really use those lists to kind of curate that content. We do always suggest, apply that records management to videos and Teams recordings, following those principles of purview, retention beats deletion, shortest deletion wins. And feel free to archive videos to a cheaper storage when that is applicable. So now we're going to store all that content in SharePoint. We're going to manage it as is. We'll curate that content for our users while it's relevant. And then if we need to, we can delete that content using the out-of-the-box tools or third-party tools, and then archive that content finally to cheaper storage when it is applicable. Just a couple of links here as well to learn more. So we do have the roadmap that is available for Stream. So this is the new Stream roadmap as well as the retirement of your old classic Stream. So you can follow along with that. And then there's an overview here from Microsoft on how to feature those videos in Microsoft 365 with pages, sites, and portals.